Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me on another of my interviews. Now, today I'm going to be talking to an intuitive healer. I'm interested in that, and also finding about sound and the importance of 432 hertz. I've heard this a number of places, how important that is, but actually a lot of stuff goes out and is broadcast on completely the wrong type of frequency, and it's not good for our cells. So I'm interested to hear about that. We're also going to find out about channeling. I've, in the last 6 months, heard a lot about this, and I really want to get to the bottom of what it is. So I was approached by a lovely chap called Colin. He has the same hairdresser as me, from Happy Mind, Happy You. Colin, welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard. Nice
Lovely,
to be here. Thank you
lovely to
for.
have you on. And yeah, that barber, he is quite severe, isn't he?
He's great, isn't
He's
he? He does a
great.
great job. It's a
Yeah.
real close cut.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, we're not here to talk about hairdressing, fortunately. You're an intuitive healer, I've written down here. Can you tell me what that means?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, what it means is that I get kind of information come in, information flow, and when I'm working with clients, such as with EFT or otherwise known as tapping, I get these little bits of information that kind of marry up with what the root cause is to their issue, and we just kind of get straight there and resolve and dissolve whatever that is.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna have to get you to just explain some of that for those people who don't
yep,
fully understand, and me, who is, I am really the baby of this whole movement, trying to sort of catch up and learn as much as I can. And so it's so honourable of me, for me, to have people like yourself who are very clever and do what you do, but I don't always understand the terms. So you mentioned tapping and you mentioned EFT. Could you explain? And also you get these downloads, I think you said. So just for those
yeah.
like me who are not familiar with this, could you just explain it in very layman's terms?
Sure. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And what we do, it's a emotional form of acupuncture.
Oh,
So we
okay.
don't use needles, we just use our fingertips on certain end meridian points and we start tapping and we start saying some things. And it's funny that when it comes to emotions and emotional issues, or let's say actually physical issues and illnesses and stuff like this, they usually stem from an emotional response from somewhere. And it's interesting that when we start working on the emotional aspects, the physical aspects tend to subside as well. So it's we're at the ground floor of this of this emotional and energy healing high rise right now, and it's about to get a whole lot better for sure.
So you said tapping. That's what you mean when you're touching the
Yeah, so
areas.
tapping
Okay.
just means tapping on certain areas, and it sounds absolutely ludicrous. And when I discovered it, and it took me a long time to find it because I didn't want to pay, so, and I found one example of what this guy was selling, and I was like, hmm. And when I realized what the points were, I was like, really? That's absolute rubbish.
Right.
And then I tried it, and I was absolutely shocked. I tried it on something quite trivial, but what it does, it doesn't get rid of the memory, but what it does, it changes the emotional attachment to that memory.
So did you
And
try
that's the
that?
thing
Did
that
you try
keeps
that on
track.
yourself?
I did. I was my first guinea pig. Yes.
So just
Yeah.
just take us through that then. So
Yeah.
because I was watching a video about a month ago, and they were talking. It sounds like the same thing, and it may not be. He said that people hold when you're young, you get this
Hmm.
bit of negative emotion. It goes in. It's in you, and then later on, it can manifest in pain in different places, or neck ache, or something.
Hmm.
And he was saying that by doing something, and it wasn't clear, but he was sort of sweeping his hand up along the, say, the spine of that person, and took away the emotion, and the pain went. Is that anything like what you're referring
Well,
to?
yeah, it's similar because it's energy work. We're working with energy,
Right.
and we know that our energy, like for example, the heart, it measures up to 5 to 7 feet away, which is interesting because
It
that equals,
measures. I'm just going to take that. It's
yeah,
very slowly. You're saying
yeah,
what the energy of the heart pumping.
yep. The actual energy of the heart is measured up to 5 to 7 feet away.
Mm.
And the only reason why they can measure up to that point so far is because that's all that the scientific instruments will actually measure up to. But they do actually believe it stretches a lot
A lot
wider
further.
than that.
So,
Yeah,
are you then saying that other people, when you're in that proximity with them, subconsciously or otherwise, can pick up that energy?
absolutely, 100%. And it's really interesting that a few years ago we had a 5 to 7 feet or 2 meter distance rule.
We
So
did. We did.
yes,
And
isn't
so
that
was
interesting?
that to push people so that they could not potentially, I mean, who knows? But it sounds like a coincidence that that was it, or maybe it was deliberate that you could
Yeah.
not feel the other person's energy coming from the heart.
It's of my opinion and how I feel that
Was that
probably is the case. Yeah.
that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Just take us through that experience that you just explained at the beginning. That you tried this. So can you tell us what sort of emotion it was that you would, and you said it was trivial, I think, that you did, and
Yeah.
then how did that manifest itself?
It was just a simple childhood thing. I wanted to test it because I was already suffering with something a lot bigger, but I wanted to test it on something because I didn't believe in it,
No,
basically.
no, well,
So
this is
I'm
it.
not, yeah, so I'm not going to go on to something really big and then go, whoa, that was a waste of time. I thought,
Right.
well, I'll try it first on something really easy,
Yeah.
happen in childhood, see how I feel about it now, and do some tapping on it. And I was like, what the hell? What's just happened there?
So what did
Uh,
happen? How did you go about it? I mean,
so we have something called the SU scale, which is called SUDS, and SUDS stands for Subjective Units of Distress. So
subjective units of distress. Right. Okay.
yeah, so what we do, we measure it
I
from a
have,
naught
sorry, I
to
have to
10.
ask. I mean, this
That's
is my
okay,
my
no.
comedy brain came in then and said, "Is that Sud's Law?"
Yeah, no,
Sorry, I had to do it.
or it could be Suds the singer from Madness. I
Oh
don't
yeah, there you
know.
go. So Sud's Law,
Uh,
yeah, subjective
yeah, units of distress.
units of distress. Okay.
Yeah. And so what we do, we measure that from a naught to 10, and 10 being the worst because no one really comes to see me when they're feeling at their best, right? Although some do, and it works great for that as well on the opposite side of the scale. But most people come to see me because they're not feeling so good. And so we use the minuses, naught to 10, 10 being the worst,
Right.
10 being like it's happening already. So this would be something like an event, a really traumatic event, which has caused some kind of major emotional trauma, and they're experiencing it all over again. So that would be a 10, like it's happening again. And so people choose their scale. I don't choose it for them. They choose how they feel about it, which is what's really important.
Hmm.
It's like, instead of me trying to say, oops, excuse me, let me just get rid of that. That should have been off.
That's okay.
Um, yeah, instead of me trying to pre-diagnose and try to say, well, this is what's going on for you, they choose the number for themselves just so that there's no one knows them better than themselves,
Hmm.
and it's getting them to trust themselves as well. And this, I think, what a lot of people don't do. They don't trust how they feel about something enough, or that maybe they've never looked at actually zeroing in on actually how exactly do I feel about this. They just have the emotion. They don't put anything to it, so they can't measure it. And so when we put that subjective units of distress, then we've got something to go on. So when we're tapping and we're starting to go through some things, when we finish that particular tapping sequence, then we can go and check those SUDS levels again and say, okay, what level are you at now?
Okay.
And sometimes it might stay the same. Sometimes it may rise, which is fine, and sometimes it may fall. At this point, we're not actually trying to get any particular kind of result, although most of the time it drops, at least by one number.
So,
Um,
so you have a an emotional thing from the past
mhm.
that is manifesting itself. What is just manifesting in you when you're worrying about it, or something like that? Are you? Is that? I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
well,
sort of get the where an initial problem would be that
okay.
the tapping then
Yeah.
reduces.
So what we have is we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And about 15, 20 years ago, science thought that most of your stuff was conscious and only a small part of that was subconscious. In fact, they've got a number to it, and um, it's 97% subconscious and 3% or 3 to 5% conscious.
So they got it the wrong way around.
Right.
Yeah.
And what they found when they did the study with neuroscience, they put an electron microscopy into somebody's brain. They saw neurons that they would say are fixed. They saw them and they're like little worms. They're really weird to watch inside the brain, but they literally disengage like this and they start looking and reaching out for another one that might want to come along. It's a likened kind of thing and it will join up again. And then they realized actually that the brain is moldable, it's pliable, which is why it's called neuroplasticity.
Right.
And so, on a subconscious level, our mind actually records all this information. The subconscious mind has no ability to accept or reject an idea, right? It goes by what's impressed upon it the most through repetition of thought. That comes from Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich.
I've read
And
that. I've read that when I
yeah,
was about 18.
there you go. It's a very, very impressive book, and says a lot about the mind even back then when it was written. And so the subconscious mind doesn't know truth from lie. It doesn't know fact from fiction. It just doesn't know. It
Hmm.
just records information to keep you safe. However, when it records things like emotional traumas, it will store in there to protect you. And it says, remember when this happened? Remember when this happened? It just keeps you on high alert. And
So is that when I'm just trying to work out? I mean, either I'm very lucky that I haven't had too many
mhm,
negative traumas that affect me today, or
mhm,
maybe I don't know that I have had them and they still do. So, for example, I used to get bullied at school, and on one particular occasion, I was used as a battering ram against the school building, which was made of brick. And
mm,
funnily enough, a human against a brick wall, human doesn't usually win,
yeah,
just so
yeah.
you know. And it's something that I do remember. It doesn't really bother me now, but it is something that happened and it was quite negative. Would
Mhm.
would that? I mean, maybe that would make me feel in a crowd of people more apprehensive. So it might come back that way. It's like, oh, look, there's about six people. They could easily pick me up and use me as a duff me up type thing. So is that the
Absolutely.
sort of? I'm just trying to sort of get an
Yeah,
example that we can
absolutely.
share to
Yeah.
people.
And if that didn't kind of affect you, it might affect somebody else really, really bad, right?
Right.
It might have a real negative impact on them. There's one belief that we all have, you, I included, and everyone, and that is a financial glass ceiling. We have a limiting belief of the financial, which is why we only reach a certain amount, because on a conscious level, we'd love to have enough money to change the world for the better, right?
Mm.
We to be able to do things for people. We'd love to be because we're service beings, we're giving beings, we're loving, caring beings. But we don't have that. Even though we have the potential, we don't maximize it. Why?
It's funny
That
because
means
I
there
thought Bill
is a
Gates
bunch of
was going to
stuff.
give me all his money so I could do all these wonderful things,
He
but
will. He will.
but he
Trust
said,
me.
yeah, oh, he will, really,
It will be donated.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we all feel whatever it is, it's never quite enough to make a big enough of a change. So
Yeah, but all those together they build, you see.
right,
Thing. So you have one thing, and what people might experience is, even though that wasn't a major thing, and this happens a lot with the clients that I see, it's sometimes something really trivial that
hmm,
they would never have thought was a link. But then when the intuition starts coming in, and I see what they're doing in their life now, and I say, oh, and suddenly it's like I see these lights kind of join up in my mind, and it goes straight to that root cause, and I go, oh my God, okay, how do I explain this now so that they can understand what it is I'm seeing? And when I talk them through and I say, can you see that what you're experiencing here, like even though it's a different scenario,
hmm,
the result is the same. And they're like, oh my God, yeah, I would never have put it to this. I had a client who was scared of flying, right?
hmm,
She absolutely petrified of flying. And she was only going to Ireland. But I say only, but for her, that was a big deal.
yeah,
She came to see me a couple of days before she was flying, absolutely petrified. And I said, okay, well, let's explore. So I'm kind of paraphrasing of what
hmm.
actually happened in the session, but I said, why is it that you're scared of flying? She goes, I just don't. Once I'm up there, I'm trapped, aren't I? I'm stuck. I'm just like, okay. So we're talking, doing some tapping and stuff like this, and then the next part is, so why do you feel trapped? Where else have you felt trapped? She said, oh, in the underground. I can't stand being in the underground. It's like I can't move.
Hmm.
So, okay. And where else have you felt like that before where you can't move? And then out it came. She said, when I was 12 years old and my parents were being divorced and they both wanted me to live with them. And I didn't know which way to go and I just felt stuck. And as soon as we tapped on that, that lifted her fear and her phobia of flying and she was off and she's jetted all over the world now since, these
So
little things.
when you say you were tapping,
Yeah,
because I'm so new to all of this,
it's
my
fine.
questions may sound like I'm being a bit pedantic or
I prefer to question than people guess they
right,
know.
yeah. But so you're talking to her,
Hmm.
and so she's got the problem, and you're trying to sort of work it all. So what do you mean when you're tapping? Where I mean, how? What is that doing?
So we're tapping on end meridian points of the body, and
And
each end meridian
yeah,
point,
what is a meridian
yeah.
point?
So a meridian point are subtle energy points in the body, and it comes from Chinese medicine. And Chinese medicine has mapped out the whole body,
Right.
and there's these energy lines, these energy flows that we now know work because they did an experiment with a guy, and they put some special dye into his body, and they said if you put it onto this point here where there is a meridian line, it will flow in that direction, and you'll see that it'll follow that exact same path.
How
And they did
fascinating!
that, and it worked. And they
Wow.
said if you put it where there isn't one right there, it won't do anything. And
Right.
guess what? It didn't do anything. It
Hmm.
just spread sporadically. And when they did this, I don't know how many holes he had in the end, but he made a good watering can, I guess. But but yeah, it showed that there are these energy points that are drawing this energy, the fluid or whatever.
So when you're are you drawing out the energy? Is that what you're doing? You're
You're
sort of
making it flow. You're making it flow. So there was another study done with five patients, and they each were kind of not feeling good about themselves. So they just did literally 5 minutes of EFT tapping.
hmm.
Now, prior to that, a nutritionist came in, took some blood samples of them, put them under a dark field microscope, and could see that the blood cells weren't actually flowing. Like a couple of them were, but on the other three clients, they weren't. They were kind of congealed. They were very slow moving or not moving at all in some cases. And she said, well, these would look like these guys have got some kind of emotional issues. So they did 5 minutes EFT. They took more blood and they looked at the blood again. And this time you could already see it starting to break up and starting to move. So what again it shows is that when we're working on, and I think intention and attention is a massive important part of that, but when we're tapping on these points, they're starting to move energy back around the body again. And I think that's where things get stuck and we have particular pains in particular parts of the body. Even if we've not done anything, we go, why is it I get such pain there?
Hmm.
It's just where the energy's trapped, it's not flowing. And once you start flowing, you feel better. And acupuncture is like I said, it's the baby brother of acupuncture. Maybe a big brother now because of just the way that it's working. It's so much less intrusive, where you can do it anywhere.
So when you're tapping,
Mhm.
you're. I mean, just can you just explain what you when you say you're tapping? Are you tapping hard? Are you just what?
Very, very gently, yeah.
Hmm.
So we'd start on here, and we'd always start with the words even though. And even
Even
though,
though.
yeah. So what it means is we're not trying to deny that the issue is there. We're not even trying to fix it. We're just acknowledging right now, this is where it is, and this is how I feel. So we'll say a few bits about that, and then we'll start tapping on top of the head and up here on the middle of the head. Even with a bald head, I don't know where the middle of my head is.
No.
So we tap around in a circle like this, and that means we get as many of these roads as possible. Because in acupuncture, they call this the junction of 1,000 roads, which means that they believe all the acupuncture points meet to that center point,
Oh
which is
right.
interesting because that's also where the crown chakra is as well. So we tap on this one, we tap on the eyebrow point, which is right on the corner of the eyes on the bone, and we follow around. And all the time we're doing this, we're saying some things, and then we go under the eye. And just by doing this by itself, what we know scientifically onto the collarbone, and then we go under the arm. These are the basic recipe, and under the other arm. And but what we know is that it sends calming signals to the amygdala part of the brain. Now, your amygdala pumps out your fight, flight, freeze responses. Is also responsible for the production of cortisol, the stress hormone. So I got to thinking, hang on a minute, but where is that coming from? Why is it pumping out from there? That must be coming from the subconscious, which means there's a link between that and the subconscious mind. And since we have now the scientific evidence that proves that it calms the amygdala, that must be a backdoor way into the subconscious. And I think that's why EFT works where mostly nothing else will. It's amazing because we get right back there whilst the mind is calm, and therefore we can get to work and fix whatever needs fixing. Not that we're actually broken in the first place, because we're not. So it's now clinically proven with the NHS, which is great.
Wow.
Yeah, they took 36 patients suffering from clinical depression and psychosis. Now, psychosis is out there, right? That is experiencing a lot of things. And 34 out of 36 of them made a full recovery in a record time. And the only thing they used was EFT.
That is amazing. That is
When you're looking at, yeah. And they're
okay.
real statistics.
So that we've got some other things to go through. I mean, I could spend ages just sort of trying to forensically understand this, and I'm going to ask you at the end if there's any recommended books to read up on this, because I find this absolutely amazing. Let's talk about channeling then, because I never quite really understand what it's one of those things. You hear people talking about it, and you think to yourself, "That is amazing. They're channeling all sorts of things from aliens to spirits to ancestors," and I think you mentioned the Askic, if I've got that right, Akashic records, which sounds like a great record label, and who wouldn't want to jig around to those? And it's one of those things you go, I'd love to be able to do that. Everybody else seems to be able to do it. I can't. Why is that? So I always get very interested but frustrated, because you hear these people and you say, "Oh yes, I'm channeling this," and you go, "I really want to be able to do this." So tell us about your channeling.
Well, the truth is, to start with, we all channel. We all do it. We've all done it. We've spoken to somebody in the past where we've enriched them with some kind of information that we either don't practice ourselves, or we didn't even have that knowledge. It's like something just popped out and it's helped them tremendously. And they go, "Wow, thank you so much. That was amazing." We're like, "Wow, that was weird," because oh, sure, no worries. That is in and of itself channeling.
So do you mean we're just inspired by something that we don't know? We've just said something to somebody, and we don't know where it comes from.
Right. Yeah.
As if
we mix that up sometimes with intuition.
Right.
Yeah. But where are we getting those intuitive thoughts from? Now, in order to understand that a little bit better, a little bit easier, because I talk very layman terms. I'm very simplistic.
And I appreciate that.
Complicated my words. Yeah. So there was something that I channeled, which was a really good understanding of actually what's happening, and to prove in a way that we are connected to everything in every single way, that we're not disconnected in any way, even though mainstream science may want to encourage you to believe that. There is evidence to show that we're not, and we're going to go through the scientific example of that, because that's where most people meet me at, because they want some kind of tangible proof, tangible evidence. And I say, okay, well, let's go with the Big Bang theory, and it is a theory, okay? But let's go with the Big Bang theory, and if that was true, what they say is that before the universe began, there was nothing except for this dot once smaller than an atom. And what it says is, if this dot was once smaller than an atom, it means everything outside of it must have been contained within it. Well, that would mean every planet and every star. That would mean every thought that could ever be thought, every scenario that could ever be played out must also be contained in that dot once smaller than an atom, because nothing was outside of it. And it also means that consciousness, this whole being, this whole element of awareness must have also been in there too, because if there's nothing outside, it must all be within. This is where you have that the one thing, the oneness. So that kind of breaks apart the whole, where there is nothing, there is no spirit, there is no soul, there is no source, because by the evidence itself says, well, before it was, then it was all there, or the potential of it was there, and it doesn't matter if it changed form, it was still there.
Right.
Had to, yeah. So I was given the channeling of the torch analogy, Okay. And if you imagine the torch, and you've got this torch on, and you've got the bulb, right, which is the source of the light.
Yeah.
And that source of the light then starts emanating light outwardly. And as it goes right at the very beginning, if you looked at that torch right close to it, it would blind you, right? It's so bright,
Yeah.
right? And as it kind of goes away and away, it starts to dissipate. Yeah, it starts to break up and it starts to lose its effectiveness. Where about 3 or 4 miles away, you probably wouldn't see it,
Right.
right? So it becomes less and less, more and more dense, if you like. Yeah, it just spreads out and doesn't become anything. And so imagine right next to the bulb itself, right next to that source of all things, of this light, there are things that people call archangels. And then as the light dissipates slightly, you have angels. And then as the light dissipates slightly, you have things like cherubim. And as the light dissipates, you have the spirit. And as the light dissipates, you have the soul. And as the light dissipates, it starts to get darker and darker, denser and denser. Yeah. So it would give you an understanding that from what I said just now about the universe beginning from this one thing and it was all there,
Mm.
as it dissipates out, it means all the information is there already. It had to have been because it came from one thing.
Mm.
Doesn't matter what direction it goes out, it was there. And if we see that as the source, the light source of it, as it comes out, it kind of filters down through into what we have, what we call reality, as what we live in the 3D reality. And but all that information is there, and we are antenna. We are antenna. If you have a car aerial, right, and you're getting a dodgy reception, and you place your hand on that car aerial, on the top of that car aerial, what happens,
You improve the yeah.
right?
And
Yeah,
often that might be because you're acting as a ground plate. My dad used to be into manufacture of aerials, and he would often say,
yeah,
"Yeah, you become the ground plane, which
yeah,
amplifies the signal."
yeah. So we're antenna, all right? We're receiving, yeah, because we're receiving that signal to come down to the ground, so that,
Mm.
and vice versa, and it comes back up again, right? So we're always receiving signals. We're receiving signals all the time. It's just our level of awareness and our sensitivity to it that, and our education to it, actually, because we're not taught this stuff.
No.
Yeah. And in education, this is vital, basic living, right? To understand who and what you are, and you're much more than just a body going out to work. There's much more to you, and so this information is available, and so we have this thing called the Akashic records, where everything has its own library of knowledge, sort of thing. So encapsulating around the earth, you would have all knowledge around earth, and everything that could ever be and was, and would be encapsulated within that, of what earth could become, and what it would entail, and all its history. And then we move out, and that contains information, and that contains information to the point of the whole universe. And the way I heard it described once was great. It's like a library, and so you have a book which may be the Earth, and then you have the number of books, which are various planets, and in our solar system. Then you have the bookshelf that it all raises on, so that will encapsulate. And then you have the bookcase, and then you have multiple bookcases. So as that expands out, you get more and more information, which means the information is already there. Like I said, it had to have been because it came from that dot once smaller than an atom.
So you said at the beginning of this with the Big Bang and everything that's a theory.
Yeah.
Presumably there are other theories about how things started. So that's a premise of one theory.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this, but presumably there are, because you said something about you were starting with the scientific version.
Yeah.
Is there a different theory that all this hangs together on?
There's the flip side of that, and that's the spiritual theory of it. And if you look at what spirituality says, it's and we use for the example the word God. It doesn't matter what you call it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just a name, and it can never define what it really is. that just narrows it down. And actually, when people think of God, they think of this guy in a cloud with a white beard
Mm.
looking down on you, ready to judge you. You know, what kind of loving God judges you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah,
Two
yeah.
pints in the morning would be great. Thanks. Yeah.
So, but they say, that God is omnipresent in all places at all times. It's the cause and effect of itself. It can either be created or destroyed.
Right. So it's kind
Yeah,
of just the source. Some people refer it to the source, which is a great term
right.
because it's not
Absolutely.
putting any religious connotations on
I
it. It's,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really good point there. Source energy. That's what I tend to call it as well, source energy, because it doesn't infringe on anyone's beliefs as well. And this is what you have to look at is like, as soon as you infringe on someone's belief, they're going to switch off and not
Mm.
actually want to take on what it is you're trying to share. So I normally come from the word source energy as well.
So,
Um,
so the challenging, so the not the
mhm,
challenging, the channeling, is that
mhm.
the antenna? Is that's you're just tuning in to either the source or the akashic. What is it again? The
Akashic records.
akashic records. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and is that something that you physically do on purpose by sitting down and sort of tuning in like you would on a radio? Or is it just that you could be anywhere and like a lightning bolt, it just like, here's some information? Because I understand that David Icke
Hmm.
had an experience in which he was being driven somewhere and then he stopped his taxi and he said, I've got to go to the top of this mountain. And he went to the top of the mountain and then suddenly he had this experience, which I understand, this is given to me secondhand, that it was like a download of huge amounts of information. And then when he went back, he was sort of disseminating this or assimilating and then disseminating the information that came
Hmm.
in one go. Is that the same sort of thing?
Yeah, it's both. So you can intentionally create and download information, or it will come just as it comes, and when I speak with you, even now, there are little bits that snip in that I go, oh wow, really cool, because I hear it for the first time as well.
So how
So
do you mean? What do you mean by that? What am I sending you subconscious?
no, it's as I'm tuning in and I'm
Yeah.
getting these little downloads, and so and I can't, again, as soon as it comes in, it
Mm.
leaves, and I can't actually recall what I said. Right. So it's not where I'm making it up, because all this stuff is researchable and factual, right?
Yeah.
And so when I get certain downloads, like I was in the underground, right? You couldn't get much deeper than that, right?
No.
I was in the underground and I was just about to go through one of the gates, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to stop. I've just got to write this down. And my partner was like, what are you doing? She's on the other side. And I was like, I've just got to write this information down. And it was about photons. I knew nothing about photons, and I'm underground.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to whisper anything to me in my ear. And yet I had this information about photons and stuff that I'm only coming to learn about now. That's true, because once I get those downloads, that information then comes to me. It's like I don't even have to go out to research it; it just ends up,
Right.
uh, you know, and there it is. So you can download it just by it just happening. Just you don't have
Right.
to
I mean,
try
this.
it. So,
You live and breathe this world.
yeah.
I clearly don't, and I'm sure a lot of other people don't. So that's why I'm trying to sort of, in a somewhat
Mm.
amateur forensic way, is to sort of try and work out exactly what's going on here. So,
Okay.
is it? So you just kind of receive. You just know. Is it like a knowing thing? You just
You
go, oh,
yeah.
I just suddenly feel like I know this. I must write it down before I forget it.
Well, here's proof that you're already all knowing.
Right.
You came here all knowing. Remember, you came from that dot smaller than an atom where everything was in the first place.
Right.
From that theory.
Mm.
And if it wasn't that theory and on a spiritual aspect, it's the same thing. You came from a place that had all the knowledge. They're both talking about one and the same thing. They're
Mm.
just opposite flip sides of the coin. One's talking about science and energy,
Mm.
and one's talking about spirituality and source.
But how do you? I mean, if you're somebody like me, who is pretty ignorant and isn't normally sort of studying any of this, how do you make it happen?
Well, you can, again, you can train. So this is about where you can do it intentionally, where you can start practicing and letting yourself go. And one of the easiest ways of doing that is just holding a pen in your hand and just letting whatever come out through a pen, and just see what comes out. And I mean, I didn't even know what channeling was. I didn't even
Mm.
know I was doing it, right? And one time I said to one of my children, I was like, "Do you know just before you go to sleep and you get like all that chitter chatter, because I can hear conversations happening. I hear like men and females talking, like having conversations. I hear single males talking or females, and it's like I'm tuning into these different radio stations, if you like."
Mm.
I said, when you get that just before you go to sleep, and my son's looking at me really strangely,
Going,
says,
sorry,
"No."
Dad, I think we get you down to
Yeah.
the old psycho
Right.
place.
I was like, okay, what about in the morning? When you wake up or you're tired, or even sometimes during the day when you get really tired and you start hearing like you start hearing the chatter,
Mm.
He's like, no, I've never had that. And I was like, that's really strange. So I started asking other people, and it was clear that not
It's
many people
just
were
you.
getting this.
You're a
Right.
nutter.
Yeah. Right. That's how I felt at the beginning. I
Right.
thought, what
Yeah.
is going on? And then I realized that not everyone actually
It's,
has that kind of experience. Not everyone does that.
mm.
But I thought it was normal. I just thought it was every day, and everyone had that before they went to sleep. I knew no different.
Yeah, of course.
And it was 2012 when I had my major awakening, where uh, if you wanted to consider it almost psychosis, it would be something like that. Uh, but that was what woke me up to seeing the world in a very different way. And I was like, everything's changed. I feel different, and I just started kind of coming into touch with myself and getting to know me.
Mm.
And that's what opened me up. And then I was doing all this writing. I used to do a lot of songwriting. I was just about to get my publishing deal, and I literally had a spiritual experience whilst as I was in my sleep or dream time, which took me out of that. I made a decision at that point, and I thought that is not the industry I want to get into. It's just something, yeah, not quite right with that. So that took me out, and it started getting me to know myself, and that was the big turning point for me. And then, let's say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe, um, I had a plant medicine, and I won't say the name of it because I don't want it
Oh,
to
I
be
see. Yeah, I know what you mean.
sensitized. Yeah, but it begins with A, and it's from South America. And that put me on the second part of my journey to that, put me in a full trance-like state of channeling at its most extreme part, where I could feel that I wasn't me, that there was this whatever, and it was very surprised to be here. It's like, and it was surprise, and then there was information coming out that the two people that were looking after me were writing down, and it said that we've been waiting for this moment for a long time. We knew it was coming, and it will get more and more now. Now Colin understands what's going on. Um, now the work begins, and they weren't wrong, because I channeled one of the most biggest channelings, the longest channeled writings I've ever done in my life. In fact, it's the longest one to date, and it spoke about the transitioning of timelines, and that blew me away because it got me to understand everything that's going on. And I think that's what we need right now, because there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of distraction,
Mm.
going on, and they're weapons, weapons of mass distraction,
Mm.
you know, and it's being used purposefully to distract you from what? From you, from getting to know you, because there's a reason for that.
Right. Okay. 'Cause now you were talking about the writing, and
Yes.
I for about 5 years, about
Mhm.
6 years ago, I was trying to write children's books, and the stories that I was writing, in the end, I realised they're not marketable for kids, because the kids' books that were on the shelves were all dumbed down. I
Mhm.
thought I was trying to write something that children would aspire to reading and would have depth and character and a bit of fun and
Mhm.
history and all that. and the experience of writing, I couldn't understand why writers had writer's block, because I just trained myself to come down about 5 o'clock, 5:30, and I would write for about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, and I would just write, bang, 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 had no problem whatsoever. And I have heard other authors say, oh, it's almost as if somebody else is writing the story, because I might have an idea of the plot, but the characters would talk themselves and the plot would reveal itself. And if I'd got my planned plot, oh, this has got to happen and this has got to happen, it would be like, no, actually, this is... And the story would take on its own thing. And often I would look back at that day's work, or I'd look back, several years and go, I'm amazed I wrote that. I didn't think I was clever enough to write like that. So would that be because I felt, in a way, it wasn't me writing, even though I would say, well, who the hell else was it? I didn't think I was clever enough to conceive these things, even though there was a lot of editing and corrections and things and trying to make it work. But the raw stuff, so is that the same sort of thing?
Absolutely, 100%. And even the stuff that you were trying to make work, it's like a jigsaw piece, and because we get maybe fragments of information, and we go, oh, how does that? Because remember that all-knowing knowledge is now filtering through this thing called a brain and trying to make sense of it. So we may not get the exact thing, and sometimes you have to go, oh, that doesn't make sense. Like when I get a download, sometimes I'm on my phone and I have to type really quickly, and there are more spelling mistakes on there than anything, but it's because I'm trying to get this information down quickly. And so, we're trying to get as much as we can. So it doesn't mean it's not channeling. It just means that we have to then go over it and say, right, okay, we don't change the actual concept of it. We just maybe have to change some words around, like move them.
Yeah.
Like one of them puzzles, the ones that you
like
you
the
get...
Tetris thing that's coming down and you shift that over here. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what the editing from a book thing. So I found it very rewarding, very enlightening. Even though they were all fictional stories. And of course, the characters were so real to me that when things happened to them, and things were supposed to happen to them, obviously, I would get emotionally upset for characters that do not exist. And some days I'd be right, and it's children's stuff, but I would be right, and I would have tears coming down my eyes as I'm writing about the thing. And then I would come to a point where you go, okay, that's enough. And you've got them in a cliffhanger situation, and you go, I have absolutely no idea how they're going to get out of this. And the next day when I come down, the answer just came. And I go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Now, I just assumed that my subconscious mind was working on the story behind the scenes, and that it was, because it was early in the morning, that it was sort of pumping in the idea before the conscious mind could look at it too critically. And go, absolutely. Oh, well, that won't work. That sort of thing.
Well, we know first thing in the morning and just before you go to sleep at night, we enter something called the theta brain state. And theta brain state is where we're just kind of on the tinkering on wanting to go to sleep, but also awake. And it's a real ideal time to train the subconscious mind, because it's a beautiful doorway, because we're not asleep, and when you're asleep you can't train anything because you're out. And when you're awake and too awake, you change your brain state, and then you can't, because the rational mind kicks in. And so this state of brain state is a really good time to actually get in there, and this is where you're at your most creative as well a lot of the time.
So would you say that creativity then is more channeling stuff than actually, as you said, people get mistaken with intuition? They think that you just, your conscious mind is very cleverly conjuring up, but I find it's stuff just comes into my mind. Now, I hadn't thought of it as a channeling experience. I just thought, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that, as if it was just ideas. I've just said, give me an idea, and an idea would come. And very often people would say to me, Richard, you're a very good ideas man, because we're doing conversation. I would just say, oh, why don't we do that? I hadn't premeditated that, and I hadn't consciously thought in a clunky way. It's just like, so again, is that just channeling stuff that's already there that you hadn't realized is there?
Yeah, I come to a realization recently, and it was about the brain. And again, this is information that pops in. Let's call it channeling. Yeah. and it's information that pops in. Usually it pops in as a question to me, and it says, "Did you know that?" And that's when it kind of opens up this whole world of awareness, this new understanding to something. And I got to understand the brain, and it says, "Do you know that the brain doesn't actually store memory in the way that science is telling you that it stores memory?" And I was like, "Well, that's funny because everything lights up and it shows you that the memory's there." And it says, "Well, no, because if you think about it, if you've got a computer has all the components in it that it needs to create the ability to receive information. Is the computer the internet?"
No.
I'm like, "No, it's not. No, the computer receives the information and it has a basic memory, but everything else comes from outside of it."
Right.
Yeah, which would be equivalent to the Akashic if you were looking at it on
Yeah.
a
So the
on
Akashic
an
is
organic
like the
sense.
internet of knowledge.
Right.
Oh, that's
And
yeah. See, that's a very nice way of describing it.
yeah, so when they're seeing things light up on the brain, it's not that that's the area that the brain's remembering from. It's that's the area that the brain's being triggered to light up so that it can receive the information from where,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that's very
Because we
fascinating.
have a technical reality, which is computer, internet,
Yeah.
and we have an organic reality, which is brain and akashic.
And here's an interesting thing, and I didn't really expect to get into this, but what you've just
Mm.
highlighted there is very interesting because one of the things we know with this human augmentation thing is that we're being told the human being or our spiritual being, however you want to describe us, is not good enough as it is, and that we need technology to make us brighter and more better people. And actually, to me, that says actually no. That means there's a way of controlling us because there'll be a technology that somebody else has. Whereas actually, we're already brilliant. We've already got this ability to channel into something. We don't need this technology. We just need to remember, and based on what you've just been saying, we just need to remind ourselves or relearn or learn for the first time and depend that actually we're much cleverer and brighter and more in tune than we realize.
We are already all knowing.
We're
And the way
already all knowing. There we go. Look at that.
absolutely, absolutely. And the reason why we're already all knowing and how I kind of explain it so that we can understand what that actually means, breaking that down, is we came into this body all knowing already.
Mm,
Now, let's take a game of chess, and you have two master chess players, and they're at the top of their field. Yeah, they know every move that could ever be made.
mm.
How fun would it be for them to play the game of chess, do you think? How educational? It wouldn't be, would it? It'd
No,
be
they know. I
boring.
mean, if they know everything, it's where's the
There'd be no
challenge?
point. There would be no point, right? So if they're already master chess players, well, let's look at us in the game of life. We're already all knowing. We're
Mm.
already masters at the game of life. So how do you come into the game of life in the way that you can experience it for the first time?
By being ignorant of it.
You forget that you're a master.
Right.
The only way. And sometimes these little snippets of information will come in that remind you,
Ah.
yeah, that you're a master because someone will say something and you go, of course. Now, there's no reason for you to accept it
Hmm.
at all. And yet it just feels right. It just resonates and you go, oh, it makes so much sense to me.
That's
Yeah.
really it's very interesting talking. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that. The police are out to get me now. Um, that's really interesting. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'm trying to keep it within the hour,
Yeah.
and I feel I could talk to you for ages about this. But I want to move the conversation on because you talked about sound healing, and I want to sort of get to
Okay.
this as
Yes.
well. And you mentioned the frequency 432 as now.
Mhm.
I was told this when I was at the Better Way conference by somebody else saying that is a frequency which we are in tune with, and it's a hertz, which I forget what the
Yeah.
hertz stands for. But and now ordinarily when I'm recording stuff here, I get the choice of 48 point something or 44.40. I think it's 48.60, which I don't really use. I think it's for everything becomes at 44 point thing. And I never gave it. I just thought that's the frequency that we record the audio and various things at. So maybe, and you also talk about you use these singing bowls as well. So maybe we could just have a quick discussion about the importance of frequency, because that's something that I'm slowly beginning to appreciate.
Yeah. So Nikola Tesla, he said, if you want to know the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And it's written in the big spiritual books. At the beginning, there was the word, and the word was sound. Yeah.
Mm.
So sound was the thing that was there first. What is sound? It's a frequency.
Mm.
Yeah. Light is a frequency. Yeah. And they're very closely linked together. But ultimately, the frequency is there. It's the thing that kind of makes things into material things. So, for example, frequency holds the walls to your office now.
Frequency, say that again.
Sorry, frequency holds the walls to your office there, right? It holds everything together. It holds the bricks together. It's what keeps things together and creates a vibration. Yeah. And what happens if someone comes in with a bulldozer and disturbs the frequency of those bricks that's being held together? What do you think happens?
They collapse.
Right, because it's no longer in resonance. We can see that with somebody with a glass, right? With one of the crystal glasses, and you get the opera singers that can come in and project their voice. Now it's just sound, which is frequency, and you can actually see the glass oscillating, moving like jelly.
Yes.
Right, when it's slowed down, when you see the image slowing down, and you can find this on YouTube, it wobbles like jelly before it can no longer hold its form, and it goes. That's because frequency holds things together. It's what creates mass, ultimately.
But other frequencies can destroy that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So a frequency out of that range or too far out of that range will then have a dramatic effect. In fact, they've been using frequency with ultrasound with cancers. And I think that's in Germany, that they're using ultrasound to actually destroy cancers. There's a man called Rife, I forget his first name, but he invented things with frequency that could destroy all this stuff. And unfortunately, all his stuff accidentally got stolen, and his building burned down. But
these terrible accidents do happen.
Yeah.
So tell me about this 432. What's the significance of that then?
So 432 is a natural resonance of nature. If you take an electron microscope and you put it onto a leaf, it's roughly around about the frequency of 432 hertz. It's much closer to that than 440 is what most of music is in today.
So let's just say this is just an eye thing that I might wear glasses with. But let's say that's a leaf. So you're saying that the frequency that holds the leaf together, the natural frequency of nature, if you measure that frequency, it is around about 432 hertz.
Yeah, and you have something called the golden ratio or the Fibonacci sequence.
Right.
And that's all about numbers, and that's about certain sequences of numbers that actually hold things together, like a shell of a snail. You'll see that it's perfect by design, and we live by the same parameters.
So is that the same frequency that holds us together? This sort of 432.
Well, it's the thing that we resonate with the most because we are organic beings still. All right. So if we're organic beings and nature is organic, then we will be in resonance with that. And also with the Schumann field, it resonates at around about 8 hertz, and 432 goes perfectly into 8 hertz as well.
So there's sort of a mathematical.
And so, and you'll notice a difference. So you can get an app on your phone, which will be a 432 hertz converter. Or if you look on YouTube and you put 432 hertz versus 440 hertz, you'll see the difference in not only sound and how it feels, but also actually what happens with 432 hertz. Like this, I created a Singing Bowls album, and if you look at the front there, you'll see that pattern is the pattern that 432 hertz makes.
It's like a sun
on water.
On water. Oh, I see. So if you've got the frequency broadcast over water, the water ripples into that pattern.
Absolutely, yeah. And in fact, if you look at something called a Schnadli plate.
A Shenadli plate.
Yeah, is a weird, and I can't even remember how to spell it, but it's this black plate that has sand on it. And
Hmm.
what they do is they put different frequencies.
Ah, right. I think I've
Yeah,
seen people do this. Yes.
yeah. And you start to see the sand. And when they've got it on a lower frequency, the pattern, it makes a lovely pattern. But the higher the frequency, the more complex the patterns, but it's all symmetrical.
Right.
It's perfect by
Like
design.
looking in a kaleidoscope.
Yeah. And so when you put 440 hertz, like I said, in 1939, around there, they changed the global tuning to 440 hertz. Now, prior to then, there was no actual tuning method, although a lot of people were already recording in 432. Some were recording in different frequencies, in different tunings, which would equal a frequency. And so they wanted to have a global tuning, so it was easier for musicians to come together and go, right, okay, we're all on the same page. It's a lot quicker than taking 2 days to
And
tune
then,
your
yeah, and
instruments.
have to
Right.
especially if you've got a
Yeah.
recording and you play it back and it's too fast or
Yeah.
too slow and you go, hang on,
Yeah.
it needs to be at this particular phrase. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So most classical music was recorded in 432 hertz. And it was, because they know they've been studying frequency, Richard,
Hmm.
for hundreds of years, not just recently. This is very well known
Right.
stuff. And
They didn't tell me, by the way. They forgot. You
no,
forgot to tell me about this, you classical people. Swines.
I could hear you. You're down there.
Yeah. I'm down on the floor trying to pick up the information. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
432 hertz. Yeah.
So they changed the global tuning to 440 hertz, which is
Deliberately, do you think?
interesting. Oh yes. Oh yes,
But
because when you look
deliberately
at the
knowing that it was a less harmonic. If I
yeah,
could get the words out, it would be useful. The
which
more less you're in less harmony. Is it
harmonic,
more? What was the opposite of harmony?
less
Staccato or
disharmony.
disharmony? There you go. Thank you very
Yeah,
much. See,
yeah.
that's why you're there doing the clever stuff, and I'm here doing the thick stuff. So yes, so it's
Let me show you the difference between 432 and 440. Would you like to see that?
yes, please. I'm putting you on the big screen now.
Okay. So
Something's happening, ladies and gentlemen.
it is
He
happening.
hasn't
Here it
actually
is.
fallen asleep. Here he is.
So so this is 432, right? This
Yeah,
is the frequency of
can you put it more in?
432 hertz.
Just a bit more. That, yeah.
Hang
Okay.
on.
So that's
Let me just
there we there we
right.
go.
Oh,
Right,
hang on.
right.
Where are
Do
we?
you know where the camera is? There it is. So the one
Right.
on the left, as I look at it, which looks like the
Yeah.
sun with its lovely
Yeah.
radiation, that's 432.
That's 432 hertz.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you can see all the separations and everything else going on.
yeah. And it
But when you
looks,
look at 440 hertz,
it's just a blob.
yes. Now, if you understand that your body is at least 70% water, if that
Yes.
has that kind of effect on water, then
Right. Oh,
what is
okay.
it that what is it you're listening to in the way of music? And we can't get away from that because it's everywhere, because radio waves are everywhere, and you've only got to get a radio to tune in, and you'll see it's there. So we're being bombarded with 440 hertz, all different kinds of frequencies, 5G, 4G.
So that is having a disharmonic. There's not a word.
Yeah,
A
I love
bad.
it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Can somebody teach me English? A dis a
This
not a
harmonic.
disharmonic. Thank you. A disharmonic effect on us because we're not in tune with what we ought to be in. So it's sort of like
Yeah.
saying the universe is in tune is 432, and if we didn't have all these radio signals, life would be nice, and all our cells would be growing properly, and our brains would be able to channel probably better. But what you're saying is because this has been deliberately
Mhm.
focused in a way that we don't notice it, yet it is having a negative impact. Is that what you mean? It's
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
and even though we're dancing around in the thing to say pop music, and we're singing whatever songs it is, they've been recorded
Mhm.
in that deliberately, even though we're having a good time and we feel good, but actually underneath, but beyond the comprehension, this is what's happening to our bodies.
And remember, if you're listening to music and you're dancing to it and you're dancing to 440 and you're reciting lyrics, you're actually creating affirmations.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
if you're dancing to the and you're
right.
dancing to it, that is that explain dad
And
dancing?
what they know is affirmations by themselves from neuroscience, affirmations by themselves don't work. But if you put emotion and visualization to them, then they work very well.
Oh right, so
That's the key to
I
affirmation.
mean I get affirmation. I mean I often say to
Yeah,
myself, well I do. I say this every day and everywhere. I'm getting better and better, and I'm
yeah.
understanding stuff.
You have to
So I do.
visualize it and feel it. That's what creates the change.
But what you just said there is, if particularly young people are singing some of these gangster rap type stuff,
Mm,
that it
mm,
has very negative, and they're emotionally engaged with it. You're saying that they are effectively bringing to them
mm.
negative connotations or negative events from the negative lyrics. If
Well,
I'm not saying
it's
all gangster rap
creating
is that, but it's not
no, no.
doesn't seem
And some are
pleasant to
trying to
me.
express how they feel, right? And they're
Hmm.
just expressing feeling, which is everyone's right. You know, they're right. They have their right to express feelings and how they feel. And but it's up to us as individuals to say, okay, well, what do I take on
Hmm.
when someone's trying to explain how they feel? Do I take that on as mine? But it was never yours.
Hmm.
So but we're too susceptible because we're not taught about how energy works and how we work with energy.
Hmm.
So coming back to the 432s and 440, it's zero point 0.8 hertz out of the sweet spot, which means that it's not too out of the range that you'd go, oh, I really don't like this music, because it would
Hmm.
put you off because your cells just would not be in resonance with it at all. To the point of where 432 hertz makes you feel slightly differently. It starts to make you feel, this is, oh, and you can play the same song from 440. You can get a 432 hertz converter on your app and you can change it to 432 hertz and just sit there and listen to it and see how it makes you feel. And it's a different feeling. It just feels warmer. It just feels more, ah, because your
I
cells are
wonder if
picking
there's
up on this.
and this is completely random. I'm just thinking of the old wireless. When you said warmer, I think of the old wireless with the valves and all of that, and you'd listen to the old-fashioned light program in the day, and it was very warm and gentle and seemed appropriate. I wonder if they were broadcasting then at 432, and when we went to sort of transistor radios, it sort of changed it. Would give you an excuse to go, oh yeah, transistor radios, you have to do it at 440, you know what I mean? We'll take
Yeah.
over the world and kill everybody in some
And, and
inspired
and it's
fashion.
one aspect, like I said, because we live in that 3D reality,
Yeah,
that is one aspect to try to keep you
down.
I don't want to use the word dumbed down,
Mm.
but to keep you in a lower density, in a
You're
lower feeling,
right.
even though you might feel great. On another scale, if you looked at what was going on with your cells, you would see that there was something quite different happening.
Okay.
But it's another version of keeping you in this 3D uh,
Sphere.
reality. Yeah. Because but we're already in 4D. That's the illusion of everything. That we're already in 4D. We're already so 4D is the ability to go backwards and forwards in time, right?
I can go
Uh,
forwards in time, only I just have to wait for the time to catch up with me.
right. So so let's go to 1930s, 1940s even, and no one was able to go for therapy and go to things like inner child of what happened as a child and go back there and fix it.
Right.
Yeah, they could only go forward and put a brave face on and man it up and just get on
Stiff
with
upper
it.
lip.
It was still going forward. And
Yeah.
then I would say like 80s coming to 90s would have been that transition period where people were starting to realize, hey, there's another way.
Hmm.
And we can go back and fix things. Or let's say it became more globally aware, right?
Hmm.
Not maybe accepted, but at least aware of the potential. And people called it nonsense and woo-woo stuff. But now we're seeing that we're able to do all this stuff that we couldn't do before then because we weren't in that conscious level to be able to do that, which tells me that we've already shifted into 4D. It's just that we're in that transitionary period. And this is why that big channeling I had called the transitioning of timelines is
Ah.
so major. It's so important for people to know that because it explains everything that unfolds and why we're experiencing what we're experiencing today. Is a major key.
And are you explaining that on a YouTube channel or on your Facebook group or anything like that? Or you
I've
still
I've
trying to disseminate it?
well, I've got most of it written down. There's parts already know that are there.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's almost like having a hard drive that I can just tap into, I can just plug into, and I can just
Yeah.
get the other bits of information there. But most of it's already done. It's lengthy, but it's so interesting. I find it fascinating because
Well,
it
clearly you
doesn't
need
come from my memory
to,
banks.
right, and clearly, as you say, you need to get that out and tell people. Unfortunately, the time is
Yeah,
time. I wanted to just finally. I know we're a bit over the hour. I like to try and keep it within the hour so that people can say,
yeah,
"Oh, it's an hour long. I can set this time." But just
yeah.
very briefly, singing bowls are they at 432 hertz
My singing bowls are every instrument I use is in the frequency of 432. I don't have anything that's in
and
440.
what's the purpose of a singing bowl other than give me some breakfast, give me
So
some
it's frequency.
breakfast?
So it's frequency. It's everything's about frequency. And sometimes, and again, this is known for thousands of years. Okay, this
Yeah,
is new science. This is stuff that we're rediscovering. And actually, every discovery that we're finding are rediscoveries. Actually, there's a whole
right.
view
Yeah.
of that.
No,
But
I really get that sense that everything that the scientists are
yeah,
sort of saying, oh yeah,
yeah.
this is true. People have been saying, thousands of
Mhm.
years before. So the singing bowl, is that to sort of help tune you to the frequency?
We come back to these places, and they were doing it in temples for a long, long time, and we come back to these places to help our bodies rebalance, to help our because once we're absorbed and surrounded by only that sound,
Mm.
it actually starts to have that beautiful positive impact on the cells. And I've had people that a lady, for example, who was needing hip replacement, and it was the only thing that would get her out of pain with her hip and a
Wow.
discomfort. I had a lady come in, she must have been in her 70s, and she said, I haven't been able to hear from my left ear for 30 years. She said, for the first time, I can hear. And
That,
it shocks me as well, and it warms my heart to know that it has such a positive effect. But we need that to balance ourselves to get back out into the world that we live in, with all these other frequencies that we're being bombarded with. And we need to clear the body. We don't keep the dirt on us, do we? When we've been out and playing or whatever
mm.
we're doing, working, we go back, we have a bath or a shower, right? We wash it, we cleanse the skin, and we need to cleanse the cells as well. We need to clean them from all this muck that kind of sticks and transmutes them into other things. And sound frequency is the key to doing that.
Um, I'm going to have to stop now, but
Fine.
I'm going to get you back, if you wouldn't
Yeah,
mind, to come
I'd
back
love
and
to.
talk more about this. This is absolutely, I'm finding this really, really fascinating. It's all new to me.
Yeah.
Before you go, where can people find you? And I'll put all the links in the
So
description.
thank you. I have a website called happymindhappyu.com.
.com.
You can reach out to me. Yeah, you can reach out to me.
Where are you
In
based?
I'm based in
Oh,
Essex.
in Essex. Jolly good.
Yes. Yeah.
And people, sorry, I've interrupted you. Then
That's okay.
people can reach
They can
out to you through
email
the.
me through info@happymindhappyu.com.
Excellent.
I have a Facebook group there as well, Happy Mind, Happy You. Or you can just reach out for my name, Colin Wyatt, Wyatt, and add me. And I'm quite happy to do that as well.
Fascinating conversation. Lots to learn. There's just so much to learn. I can't
Yeah.
get enough guests on the show enough to learn, especially in this sort of more esoteric area, and to know about this, the fact that we're in 4D, not 4G. And 5G and all of this
3D.
nonsense, and all of that, because I think this is brilliant. But rather than extend this video and lose
Yeah.
ourselves, it would be great to have you back again in a month or so's
I'd
time.
love to. Yeah. I'd love
Thank you
to.
so much, Colin. I found this really interesting. Uh,
Richard, can I say that
mm,
you're doing an amazing job as well at getting this out to people? Like I know you give credit to all the people talking to you, but you're a catalyst to this. You're a very, very important and integral part to this, and you're living your purpose on purpose, right?
well, I just feel I've got to do this. And you get up in the morning and it's I find every day very exciting. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think the lovely Julia is too pleased, because she's unfortunately, it's like, well, I've just got to do this. We've got to do this now, because now seems to be the most important time, and people keep asking me, and I just keep saying yes, because But I'm sort of slightly concerned that I shall wear myself out. So I've got to sort of try and do that. So I might have to order some singing bowls. And
Yes. Well, you're filled with infinite energy, so
oh
you
right.
can wipe yourself out, or you can top yourself back up and
Well, I'd
just
like,
keep.
yeah. Well, this is why obviously I need you
Yeah.
back on the show to help me how to
Yeah.
top myself back up and learn a bit more about
Indeed.
channeling.
Indeed.
But I better end this show now. Big thanks to Colin. Do check out happymindhappyu.com and reach out if you want some further information. Info at the happymindhappyu.com, which would be brilliant. Interesting to read your comments and suggestions. But unfortunately, got to draw this to an end for now. Thank you very much, Colin. I really appreciate your time. And now I know what tapping is. So if I hear it on the phone, I'll know they're not just listening to me, but they're pushing all the little points.
All your buttons.
All my buttons. Yeah, they're always pushing my buttons. Until next time, thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. From Colin and I, goodbye.